Welcome to section 8, and in this section we're going to introduce routing into our application. And let's take a look at the learning goals of what we're doing here. First of all, we'll discuss why it is we need a router. And this is common to any single page application because we're not navigating between pages, we're navigating between components. So we'll discuss that briefly. We'll also take a look at the routing solution that we're going to add to our application, which is going to be React Router, and we're going to take a look at its API. We're also going to take a look at the history object, which React Router uses to keep track of our location. So why do we need a router then? Well, like any SPA, single page application, SPAs need routers because we don't transition from index.html to activities.html. We transition between components, and we only have one page, the index.html. Now, it's not obligatory to use a router in every application you create. Your app might be small enough just to use conditionals, as we are at the moment, so you can display various elements on the page by conditionals themselves. Our app is going to get more complex, and we are going to need the routing solution we're going to add, and the one that's the most popular by far and away with React is React Router. React doesn't have an opinion on what routing solution you use, but the React community has settled on this, and it would be highly unusual to use an alternative. And the reason it's the most popular choice is its API is incredibly simple. We start off with a browser router, and we surround our app with the browser router component. Inside our app, we use root components, which get replaced with the components that we want to load when a particular route is navigated to. And then we've got various options to link, use a nav link or a redirect, and these take the place of A tags in our application. So if we want to add a link to a button, we simply surround that button with a link. And if we want to make the button active when a link is clicked on, then we can use the nav link. And of course, if we want to redirect a user, then we've got an option to redirect as well. So a pretty simple API. There is more to it, but the fundamentals we'll be covering in this section all encompass these parts of the API. We also have access to React Router hooks, and we can hook into the router state to get various pieces of information. We have an option to use history, and React Router uses a history object, which we'll discuss momentarily, to keep track of the user's current location, or the browser's current location. And the history object that we use provides certain functionality. It has methods that allow us to push a new route into the history. And that will cause a re-render and load up the component that we've gone to. We've got a hook that will allow us to get the location, where we're currently at, and any attributes about the location. We have an option to use params. If there are route parameters, let's say, for example, we wanted to get an individual activity and we wanted to get the ID of the activity from the route, then we could use params. And there's a hook that I've never found a use for, which is to use route match, which does the same thing as the route component in how it matches the URL to a particular route. But I've yet to find a use for it in any application. So the history object then keeps track of the current location, and whenever we move location, we push a new route into the history object, whilst we're inside the context of our React application and inside the browser router. Then our components are going to re-render when there's a change detected, and the component we're looking at will be replaced by another component. So React Router is pretty simple to use, and you'll see that as we refactor our app to include routing inside it. And if we take a look at the before and after of what we're hoping to achieve here, well, we do really have a single page application, and if I click on the different activities, then we're just really displaying these things on the right hand side of the page, and we're not routing anywhere in our application. So it's the definition of a single page application, but after we've implemented routing, then we now have routing in our application, and if I click on view, then we go to an activity. Please don't worry about how it looks at the moment. I appreciate our activity details page could do with some care and attention, and it will get it after this section. But we can go back to our activities, we can go and create an activity, and if we edit an activity, let's go to view, and then we go to edit an activity. We've got all of our activity information in here, and we can submit, and we'll be redirected back to the activity with the updated information. And we've also got our homepage. Again, the styling could use some care and attention, but we've got our homepage that's outside of our nav bar and everything, and then we could go to our activities and load our activities. And that's what we're aiming for.